Original, stylish and solid, desired, copied and reinvented, industrial furniture has become an interior design classic. But what can we still find today and where to look for it? Here's a bit of advice for the uninitiated.
First of all, there are several types of industrial furniture, but the common underlying feature is that it is originally a functional piece of furniture that has a specific use in a professional context. And the term doesn't only cover furniture, it can also describe lighting. It also relates to categories like ironmongery, sinks designed for public buildings, factory radiators for heating. The element that most symbolizes industrial furniture is metal, since these are objects that were designed at a time when the metal industry was coming into its own. Therefore, we're talking about the end of the 19th century. But it's also the furniture of today. What I mean by that is that we see it everywhere. But at the same time, it's not as easy to find as it used to be. Basically, there was a time when we could still find abandoned industrial furniture in scrapyards or salvaged by demolition firms. Now, of course, since it's become fashionable, it's obviously not so simple, but there are still a few antique dealers that have chosen to specialize in this type of furniture.
To help us appreciate and discover all the possibilities of industrial furniture, we have followed the interior designer Rodolphe Bonnier. He took us to the covered flea market at Saint-Ouen.
Hello?
Hello, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
So, have you had any new items come in recently?
I just received these 2 units, 3-tiered units on rollers.
So, are they from a factory?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, they come from a factory that made barometers. Apparently, the barometers were inserted into these little holes so that they could be painted.
Right. And what sort of price are we looking at for these tables?
They're worth something in the region of 300 euros each.
Around 300 euros each?
Yep.
Delphine specializes in small objects that can easily be integrated into any apartment and that she adapts to give them a new function.
This object was used in a garage for the mechanics to hang their tools on. Originally, there was also a little metal basin, but it was badly damaged, so I preferred to remove it and cut a piece of wood.
Ah, so you added the wood.
That's right. In fact, we usually have to completely restore these objects. They generally need a really good clean. Sometimes I pass them on to someone who polishes them, because there's often a layer of paint or rust. Anything like that, we get rid of. It needs to go. Sometimes I do it myself. Otherwise, I give it to a professional if it's not too complicated or if the job is too big.
Lighting, small pieces of furniture, stools, mailbox-style cabinets are the classics. But the real charm of industrial furniture is that we often find completely original objects, each one with its own story to tell.
How are you? You're well?
Rodolphe now takes us to a boutique in the 18th arrondissement of Paris to meet another big fan.
I like that clock face over there. Is it double-sided, that one?
Toutes les deux sont double face et fonctionnent, ce qui est assez rare. Et ce qui est assez rare, d'autant plus qu'elles fonctionnent avec leur moteur d'origine. Celle-ci aussi, horloge de gare.
Frédéric particularly appreciates lights and clocks, but that doesn't stop him from occasionally falling under the charm of some quite strange, even incongruous objects.
This looks like a sort of safe. What's the story behind it? Was it a built-in safe? Oh, really? So you've no idea what it was originally used for?
Cela dit, je ne sais absolument pas d'où il provient. Il est industriel, c'est clair. Traité en ferraille, traité en Louis XIII, ça m'a beaucoup amusé. Donc, meuble de rangement. Et alors, ce qui est amusant, c'est qu'à l'intérieur, quand on enlève ce tiroir, ici, on a un secret.
Let's just say that there is nothing ordinary about an object like that, and that you won't see one in many homes. Nevertheless, these weird and wonderful objects all have a soul, a personality, and a history.
For me, there is a definite period for industrial furniture, and for me, the period pretty much ends in the 50s. After that, objects become disposable, used briefly and then thrown out. There is a big difference between a cast aluminium clock and a clock with just the face made of metal and the main body made of plastic, concealed underneath a layer of paint. What I mean is that today's industrial objects are designed to last just long enough to write off the cost of making them. Today, everything is about money, about costs and profits. Right, well, this object, let's see, the law says that it needs to last 3 years, so we'll make it last 3 years. Some people may say, why not? Personally, I don't agree with that way of thinking. I don't have anything in that vein in my shop.
Here, the objects are raw, solid, and built to last. And functionality takes precedence over beauty. These no-frills objects transcend the boundaries of fashion.
Hello.
Here, the objects that we find are often industrial-sized, and while they may well look great in a loft apartment, you might have trouble fitting them into anything smaller.
Here we have a sculptor's ladder, and this here is where the sculptor would hang his bucket and his tools. I think a ladder like this would also have been used for restoration work in a museum, for example, for working on large sculptures. Yes, it's a really great object, this, but obviously you need to have the space for it. For sure. This sort of object is not for everyone, but it's the sort of object that someone will fall head over heels in love with. In other words, it's not going to sell straight away, unless you're really very lucky. But it's the sort of object that one day someone will see as they walk past, and they will stop short and say, I want that, in the same way as we might fall for a sculpture or a painting.
Sculptures, ladders, endless pigeonhole filling cabinets, gigantic clock hands, and even gym mats from the Eastern Bloc countries, these objects have really served a purpose, and that's what makes them special. Rodolphe's last address is another surprise. Rather than furniture, it is industrial materials that interest Jean-François Lebrun, who not only restores but also completely transforms industrial furniture. Rodolphe takes us to visit his workshop in Pantin.
Originally, we started out in the salvage business, not just tinkering about and changing this and that, but really large-scale salvage. And did we work? For 2 years, every fortnight, we'd go to Billancourt, we'd go to Bissogan, we'd do the rounds of the Renault factories in Bas-Meudon. In the factories, we'd see the metallic constructions that had been made. The shape of the construction, how it had been assembled, would give us an idea of what else could be done with it. When we look at this metal side piece, what do we see? It's nothing but a simple wall bracket designed to hold up part of a house. But we took these brackets, and what we did was to make a much smaller volume out of them, in this case a table. That's the idea, to take the basic material of the tool of the industrial furniture and make it into everyday furniture. Isn't that right, Rodolphe?
Tout à fait, Jean-François.
So, in combination with noble materials like wood, these unseemly objects destined for the scrap heap are given a new life. But not all industrial objects are created by salvage. We can also find new objects that are reproductions, imitations, or classics that are still being made today.
Hello, welcome to Persona Grata. Come on in. We mainly sell furniture and objects. Most of the furniture you see here is of industrial origin. It is French furniture made in France since the 50s, and that we continue to sell today. These are French design chairs that were created by a designer called Pouchard in 1956, to be precise. This chair is still being produced today. Here we have a chair that is dated 2005, a new design that is sold under the Persona Grata label and was created by Thomas Desmay, who was a contemporary designer. The slight difference is that the more modern chair has a slightly higher backrest. The seats are octagonal, but still comfortable, and basically corresponds more to the present-day silhouette. Most of the furniture you see here was first produced in the 30s, the 50s, and the 60s, and they still sell really well today.
Which just goes to show that industrial furniture can work in any interior and with any style, and is not just made to work in a factory.